A certainty of a spanking in that house was that it was guaranteed to draw a crowd. As if by magic, our impending doom drew the rest of the kids into the adjacent family room from outside and every other part of the house. First were the oldest of my aunt and uncle's biological kids, the twins Jackson and Jordan, both around 14 at the time. Jordan, in particular, seemed to delight in seeing his siblings in trouble, especially the girls, and he always wore this smarmy look on his face while he leered at you. My cousin Julia, aged 12, was next in, followed by Jason, who was around 11. I am not sure if the youngest, Jeremy, came in at some point, but it was the 4 other sibs who were in the family room when Judy returned from retrieving the stick from the back hall closet. My aunt pulled a chair from the kitchen table and turned it so the back faced away from us. She wheeled around and pointed in our direction with the stick. I was extraordinarily nervous, both at the prospect of a spanking with this wicked implement and having it witnessed by a gaggle of onlookers. I could feel my face flush and my breathing accelerate. I was not making eye contact, but I knew all eyes in the family room were riveted on us 2 girls midsections of Judy. The worst part of the whole spanking ordeal for me was no longer the physical part, but the exposure and embarrassment, especially when witnessed. We stood next to each other, arms at sides. My aunt pointed at Judy, then tapped the chair. Judy, familiar with the routine, shuffled over and gripped the sides. My aunt stood behind her and gave 2 small taps on Judy's bottom. I heard the stick cut through the air and then land with a resounding crack that seemed to bounce off the kitchen walls. There was a beat, then Judy thrusting forward as she let out a low moan. Another beat, and then, one. There was a 2 or 3 beat pause, then another whoosh crack that drew an even louder moan, followed by the counting of the stroke. Judy kept it under control through the first 6 strokes. The 7th landed at the very top of her thighs where they met her bottom, and she let out a small shriek, and while still holding the chair, rose up on her tiptoes. Her voice was high and quivering as she counted 7, 8, 9 and 10 came in rapid fire, and I could hear Judy breathing rapidly and sounding as if she were ready to break down completely. 11 was another cut to the sit spot that elicited the loudest response yet, and then 12 quickly followed. As she counted out 12, she stood up and began vigorously rubbing her bottom. As she turned to face me, I could see tears freely flowing down her face. She shuffled back over and stood next to me. It took all of my strength to be able to move my feet to go over to the chair and bend over. I felt weak and almost in a fog. I gripped the sides of the chair until my knuckles turned white. I kept thinking how exposed I must be and what view my cousins were getting of me. I heard my aunt say something, but I am not sure what it was, then a whoosh and then a crack. For one moment, I felt nothing, then instantaneously there was a searing jolt of pain that radiated out from my bottom through my entire body. I literally felt the hairs on my arm stand up. I would have screamed, but I could not find air. I lunged forward and then back and somehow managed to croak out 1. My mother also made us count swats, but did not insist on them part. Just as the electric wave of pain was easing, a second whoosh crack, and again that same split-second delay as the pain coursed through my bottom. This time, I found my voice and let out a loud cry before I counted the stroke. My aunt's cadence for the spanking was patient and steady. The 7th landed on my sit spot, a sensitive area that brought out my loudest and deepest response. I looked down and noticed that the seat of the chair now had a healthy deposit of my snot and tears. I prided myself on not breaking for spankings, but that one had been called early. I lost my dignity and was a sobbing mess. The remaining strokes were carried out in more or less the same way. When the 12th was delivered, it was dead across the center of my pulsating bottom. My knees buckled and I collapsed to the floor, sobbing openly. My aunt told me to get up, and somehow I did and worked my way back next to Judy, who was still sniffling. Our punishment was not over, however. As at my own house, we had to each park our noses in a corner of the kitchen. I was desperate to rub my poor bum, but there is no rubbing allowed in the corner, so I was forced to endure the throbbing fire in my behind without relief. After that, we were sent to Judy's room until dinner.